What's the creepiest thing that's ever happened to you or someone you know? I live in a semi-rural area where it's still common to have people hitchhiking to and from the nearby city, either on the road or posting on the community Facebook page and having people offer to pick them up if they're waiting on the road when they pass on their commute. I've stopped to help people in the past, with no negative experiences. It was big news when a local woman stopped to help a man in a white pickup with a flat tire. He tried to reach through the window to strangle her, but her brother was in the back seat and was able to break the attacker's grip. She posted about this on the community page. 2 months later, I'm on my way home from a swing shift about 11 p.m. and it's raining. I see a guy with his shoulders hunched against the wind, slowly walking away from a small sedan car with hazard lights flashing. He gave me the creeps, and I thought of the warning I'd gotten months before. It was several miles to the closest gas station and at least 2 to the closest house with a phone. I felt so guilty, but I kept driving. I couldn't sleep that night thinking about the dude I'd left out in 40-degree rain. I found out about a week later that 10 minutes after I'd passed the guy, the police stopped to help him. They checked the car before going to talk to him and discovered blood coating the inside of the car's smashed dashboard. This guy had murdered 2 women since his attack on the woman he lured with his white truck, and he'd stolen one of his victims' cars to use after the warning about his white truck was posted online. That arsehole was walking around in the rain, trying to look pathetic and miserable to bring in his next victim. When I was younger, I was at my uncle's house in the countryside with my sister, and we were playing hide and seek. My uncle went out to buy some food for us. While he was at the store, I was hiding downstairs in this weird closet/attic thing that I had found. I heard a little banging noise and got kind of scared. However, I just chalked it up to a rat or something and continued to hide. But then, as I was hiding, I heard the unmistakable sound of a man's cough right above me through the ceiling. I immediately got out and ran to my sister. We both sat at the door together, crying, until my uncle got home. When my uncle got home, I told him what I had heard, and he just laughed it off. We were relieved and just chose to believe we were imagining the whole thing. However, a decade later, an old man's dead body was found when my uncle tried to sell the house. It was revealed he was squatting there for almost a decade, and he had written in a notebook how he was going to kill my uncle and keep the home for himself. And I think that would have happened if he didn't die. When my cousin was a teenager, maybe 18 or 19, she and her friends went out to party a lot. In my country, you can legally start drinking at 16 years old, so most teenagers start going to clubs at 16. Back then, hitchhiking was still pretty common, and most teenagers did it to get home or to the city, since only very few had cars of their own. So my cousin and her friend want to go home after a night out, and they end up getting picked up by this middle-aged guy. He's nice enough and they make small talk while they drive. Suddenly, he takes a turn onto a remote road leading into the woods. He locks the car from the inside and his fake, friendly demeanor suddenly shifts. Instead of being talkative like he was moments ago, he is now very tense, quiet, and determined looking. They quickly realize what's happening and realize that they are in serious danger. My cousin's friend started crying quietly, but my cousin stays calm and starts talking to the man. She tells him about her family, her mom and dad, her brother and sister, and asks if he also has a family. When he tells her that he has a wife and 2 children, she asks for their names and how old they are, which school they go to, what their hobbies are, all while he drives them deeper into the woods. It must have triggered something in the guy, because after talking with him for a couple of minutes, he stops the car and breaks down. He starts crying and tells them that things aren't going well at home, that his marriage is pretty bad, and that he fears he'll lose his kids. My cousin comforts him during his breakdown and lets him spill his heart out. Eventually, he starts the car again, turns around and drives them home, saying he's sorry. They get out once they reach the street my cousin lived on, and when he's about to drive off, my cousin sees him put a knife on the passenger seat that he had kept hidden next to him. Her stomach dropped. They had nearly gotten raped or worse, but they were somehow able to talk him out of it. When I was a kid, maybe around 5 years old, I was in the back seat of the car while my parents were driving. I was old enough to understand things and remember this story, but young enough to still be buckled into a car seat. We were leaving Sam's Club in the not-so-great area of town. As we were leaving the large parking lot, there was a man who was standing by one of the parking lot stop signs, and he approached the car. My dad rolled down the window and was asking him what he needed. The man began giving some story about how his wife and kids were sitting in the car a few miles down the road, and he needed someone to take him to the gas station to get gas, and then drop him back off at the car. This makes no sense if you know the area. How did he get all the way to this parking lot? There's also a gas station literally 1 block away from where we were. I remember my dad sort of shifting around, like he was trying to be polite, but also declined the guy's request. My mom was looking at the man from the passenger side, and the man was being rather persistent. Anyways, the creepy part that I very distinctly remember is, at some point I got so fed up and scared that I said, "Dad, when can we go home?" That was a bold move coming from me, who usually sat mute when strangers were around. Right when I said that, the guy literally stuck his head in my dad's window, looked back at me and said, "Is that your daughter?" My dad said, "Yes," and the man suddenly goes, "Oh, never mind, man, never mind. You guys go on and have a good day." 2 days later, his mugshot was on the front page of the newspaper. Apparently he did something like that to someone else, and they ended up being murdered by the man. Who knows what would have happened if I had not been in the car with my parents that day. When I was in undergrad, I was walking to class in one of the school buildings, when I was approached by a gorgeous guy who was about 6 feet tall with a perfect smile. He was affable and asked me out. We started hanging out a few times a week. I felt at ease around him. One weekend, he invited me to a party his fraternity brothers were hosting. We arrived at the party, and I saw my anatomy lab partner, who happened to be his fraternity brother. I chatted for a few minutes with the fraternity brother, and then I resumed mingling with him for about 10 minutes. He then asked me to walk back to his car with him. He said for me to get in the car. I sat in the passenger side, and he looked at me with the coldest, most venomous look and said, "If I see you talking to one of my fraternity brothers ever again, I will smash your head into this fucking windshield." I was utterly shocked, but my intuition suddenly kicked in, and the voice literally said to me, "Remain calm." I walked back to the party with him at his demand, and at some point found a friend who I implored with to take me to my dorm. I was terrified. I blocked him after this and pretended like I didn't know him when I would see him on campus. This guy eventually became student body president. I only told one additional person this happened. I'm sure he is still abusive to his romantic partners. This story happened when I was midway through a 12-hour road trip alone, driving all my college apartment stuff back to my parents' house. My car was totally overpacked with boxes, a bike, my keyboard, etc. I'm very low on gas, so I pull over to a gas station in the middle of nowhere, Georgia. Sun is dipping low and the gas station is empty, just off the side of the main road intersecting the highway. Few cars pass by that road, and it's a quiet town. As I'm pumping gas, a thin, scraggly guy walks up and starts mumbling about asking for the time. I tell him the time and make small talk, but not a word this man said was intelligible. All the while he's circling the car and commenting on my stuff, but again, I can't really understand his words too clearly. I make an excuse to duck into the convenience store, which I needed to do anyways, because my bike was rattling loose and I wanted a bungee cable to fix it more securely. As I go into the store and search for a cable, I notice a scraggly man also entered, and he's now talking with the clerk of the store. The scraggly guy and the store clerk both looked like meth heads. However, she looked a lot less dangerous than the man, much more trustworthy, while something about that guy gave me the creeps. Anyways, I find my cable, and as I approach the register, she makes small talk about seeing that my car is overpacked and asked if I was moving somewhere and a bunch of other random questions. She also asks about the cable, and I explain it's to secure my bike more firmly. She then tells me that I should drive my car behind the gas station and they'll help me tie it up tight. Speaking in the plural, implying what I kinda already deduced. She and the man are associates somehow. Again, my car is sitting just outside the window of the shop, in clear view of the main road. I was already on edge, and I found it extremely weird that she would tell me to drive it behind the building, where nobody could see it, for them to help me tie it up, as if that couldn't be done in the normal refueling area. At this point, my get the hell out meter is maxing out, so I thank her but tell her I'll be okay. And then I practically jog to my car and get in, locking the doors immediately. As I leave, I watch through the window as the woman and man are in a very animated conversation, gesturing towards my fleeing vehicle. Could I have been paranoidly misreading these people because they kinda looked like meth heads? Sure. But making an offer that sketchy is not a very normal thing to do. When I was 11 and my brother was 4, it was late at night and we were home alone. My mother and stepfather were out along with my little sister. Since we were not his children, we rarely got to go out with them. I was watching TV and my brother had fallen asleep next to me on the couch. From the couch you could see a large window with sheer curtains. Outside of that window was a parking area. I looked over and realized that there was a man at the window, just standing there looking in. This was before cell phones, so I couldn't call my mom. I tried calling my aunt, but she lived in another town and she thought I was just imagining things. I tried calling the police and they said they'd send someone, but they didn't seem to be taking me very seriously either. The man started to try to get the window open. I was paralyzed with fear. At some point I realized I was shaking, and this snapped me out of my panic. I tried to shake my brother awake, telling him there was someone trying to break in, but he was so deeply asleep that I couldn't get him up. By this time I was on the verge of tears and was shaking so badly. I couldn't leave my brother there, and the man was still trying to get in. As I'm trying to lift/drag my brother, I hear the front door coming open. But it wasn't the man, it was my family returning. It turns out that he noticed them walking toward the house and nonchalantly leaned against the car, asked for a lighter for his cigarette and kindly greeted them, leaving them completely unaware that he was just trying to break into the house moments ago. My mom later remarked on how friendly he seemed. I definitely feel like something was watching out for me and my brother that day. Minutes later, and the man would have likely been in the house. I got off work early one day and go back to my apartment to relax before I have to go pick up my boyfriend. We only have one car. When I get to my apartment building, there are 4 guys standing at the parking lot entrance to the building being loud and joking around. I walk around the group of guys and unfortunately have to get close to them to get in the door. They start whistling and calling out to me. I ignore them, punch in the passcode and keep walking, not even looking in their direction because I don't want to encourage them. One of them catches the door before it closes and follows me inside, uncomfortably close up 3 flights of stairs. I have my keys out and placed between my knuckles. I start walking up the steps faster and pull open the heavy door to my hallway with only enough space for me to get through. Luckily, the door closes fast enough to stop the guy behind me for a second. I use this to my advantage and sprint down the hallway to my door and get my key in the lock. The guy pushes the hallway door open and sprints after me. I turn my lock and slam my door behind me, locking it again just as he reaches the door. I watch as the handle shakes and jiggles as he tries to open the door. He calls out to me, "I know you're in there." I don't answer, as I call my boyfriend asking him to grab a cab and explain what just happened. Then I call the police where they tell me they can't do anything as he didn't get into my apartment. They just tell me that by the time they get to me, the guy will probably be gone anyways. When my boyfriend got home, the guy was gone. I didn't go home early until after that guy moved out and the quiet family with a baby took his place. I never saw the guy who tried to get into my apartment again, and I hope it stays that way. When I was 12, my family and I went to Sam's Club. Being a little asshole, I decided that I didn't want to walk with my family, so I wandered around looking at clothes and books. An employee kept watching me, like staring really hard. I figured he thought I was going to steal, so I smiled at him so he knew I wasn't bad. He smiled back. He kept checking me out though and asked me how old I was. We talked about my favorite books and video games. I remember being uncomfortable but couldn't figure out why, because he was super nice to me. I remember wondering if he was flirting with me, but reasoned that he couldn't be because I'm a boy. Really weird conclusion to come to, but I was 12. I genuinely thought he was just interested in my favorite video games. The conversation died down and I decided I needed to piss, so I went into the bathroom. Less than 10 seconds later, and the restroom door opens. The guy stands in front of my stall, even though there were empty ones. I recognized the guy's shoes as the employee's. I stand there for a couple minutes, done pissing, but really confused and kind of scared. I thought he followed me because he thought I was stealing. Then the guy held a camera over the stall door and took a picture of me. Like real quick, 1 or 2 pictures of me just standing there looking up at the camera. My dick wasn't out or anything, just me. In the bathroom. Someone else came in and he immediately went to the sink and started washing his hands like he just finished using the bathroom. Then he left. It was really creepy. I didn't tell my mom anything except that the Sam's Club guy thinks I'm stealing, and she laughed. I realized way later that he was just a pedophile. Back in the early 90s, my sister took my nephew to a playground. When they were leaving, she noticed a man approaching her. He was well dressed in a suit and seemed to be driving a beat-up pickup truck. He asked her if she could drive him to the gas station a few blocks up so he could call a tow truck, as his truck had broken down. She told him no, that would make her uncomfortable, but she would gladly stop at the gas station and call the tow truck for him. He started to insist it was only a couple of blocks and he was already very late for work. Now feeling very uncomfortable, she said no again. He then got mad, really mad, and yelled at her, "I only wanted you to take me home." She noped right out of there, jumped in the car, backed up quickly and rolled the window down just enough to say, "Don't worry, I'll call a police officer to help at the gas station," and sped off. She did stop at the gas station, called the police and returned to the park with the police officer. However, the guy and his truck were nowhere to be found, which just confirmed her gut feeling. I lived next door to Ward Weaver in Oregon City during the time he killed 2 teen girls. During the time these girls went missing, I began to notice a smell of something rotten. Important note, right up the road from us is a chicken processing plant. I was well aware what rotting chicken smells like. This wasn't chicken. Naturally, with everything occurring and them not having found the girls, I called the cops and reported the smell. They told me it was the plant down the road and hung up. 2 weeks later, Ward Weaver is arrested and they find a concrete slab. Underneath that slab are 2 oil drum barrels. The girls were inside. The smell I experienced was rotting human flesh. I will never forget that smell. I work at a coffee shop in a rather large US city, so our cafe is always full of people. One shift that I was working, someone had turned in a phone that someone had dropped and left behind. Just a basic, slightly older looking smartphone. It wasn't password protected, so my co-workers and I took a look around on it to see if we could find any clues as to who it belonged to. But there were no saved numbers, no text messages or calls, no identifying information anywhere. So one of them went to the camera roll and found nothing, except for pictures of me, 936 pictures of me. They scrolled back months into the camera roll. Some were up close taken from an upward angle, like someone was standing by the bar and taking them sneakily. Some were taken from different tables around the cafe. A few were taken through the front door or windows. There were also a couple taken of me out in public, just living my life. We called the cops to see if there was anything they could do, and they ended up filing an unlawful surveillance complaint because one of the photos happened to be of me in the bathroom through an open door. I was changing the soap out in the bathroom, nothing too gross. They made a copy of that photo, but as far as the others, I was technically on public property, so there was nothing they could do. They let us keep the phone, but no one claimed it within a month, so my manager let me smash it. I still have absolutely no clue who it was. I'm a biologist that often has to do fieldwork surveying unmaintained private properties in the middle of nowhere. Long story short, we find a body face up in a stream, deep in a thickly wooded wetland. The body looked several months old, at least. No clothes, no tools, no shelter, nothing nearby to suggest who he is or how he got there. We couldn't even tell race or gender from what we saw. We call the police and they immediately tell us it's probably the missing person who ditched his car nearby. They apparently searched for weeks with dogs, horses and ATVs, but didn't find any sign of the guy. All they found was his family car loaded with cash and a handgun. They also tell us he seemed to be running from someone or something, real or imagined, they weren't sure. Apparently the man didn't even close his car door, just ditched it at a rail crossing and took off running into the woods in a tremendous hurry. I find his clothes about 30 yards up the stream bank from where the body was found. His pants were neatly folded and placed on top of his nice brown loafers, underpants and socks on top of those. He placed his glasses atop his socks, very orderly, and in a nice pile. His shirt and undershirt were hanging from a tree branch right above those as if to dry. I mean, the whole thing creeps me out even a year on. But what unsettles me is the fact that he ran from his family, drove several hours from his home, ditched his car, and fought a mile through briars and thick woods only to stop and carefully fold and hang his clothes before meeting his end. I look him up every now and then and still can't find any more info about what happened or why. If you guys like this video, please be sure to drop a like and subscribe, and also check out my TikTok account, Scary Time. That is linked in the description below. And as always, stay scary.